Hey everybody, welcome back to the Paddle Pursuit podcast. We're back here at the $10 million studio. It is me and Christina, my wife, and we are here today talking about paddling stuff. Normally I have a different guest on instead of us, but I haven't done my due diligence this week in booking somebody. I totally forgot. That's my fault. But guess what? I have somebody that I can always talk to, my wife.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Rosie.
Rosie is episode 100, which I made a thumbnail for that. And this is like episode like 26 or something. Like
yeah,
we're going to get to 100.
It's only 2 years worth of episodes to get to
oh my God,
100.
Is Rosie going to even be alive?
Don't say Don't say that.
Rosie will be 100-year-old in 2 years.
No, she won't.
Just kidding. All right. So really the reason that the two of us are here is we want to talk about paddling events going on. And we want to talk about the Texas Water Safari. Right, Christina? What do you have to weigh in on some of the controversy revolving around the toughest race in America?
So actually, we are going to play a little game today where I have asked some people in our little paddling community very last minute. So thank you, everybody who did respond. I wanted to play Would You Rather, which is basically a game where you're put with two situations or, options and you have to pick one. And it's kind of like a fun sleepover party game type of thing, but I decided we would make it paddling. So
Christina didn't want to lean into controversy like I did. But if any of you are out there and you want to talk about the Texas Water Safari, you let me know because that'd make a great episode. The two of us, we're outsiders, as you would use the terminology for, so we don't have the information. Christina doesn't like to lean into controversy like I do. And, but before we get into that, first thing is she was explaining this premise to me, and and she's like, oh yeah, like, what's it called? Like, would you rather?
Yeah, would you rather?
And I'm like, I didn't grow up a 13-year-old girl, okay? Like, I grew up a dude, okay? We didn't do this. It was just truth or dare or whatever. So, so if you don't know what this is, neither did I. Before we get into it, not copyright infringement, but we have been getting into cocktails lately, right? On our honeymoon, we went to New Orleans, and I got a Sazerac, came home, did the Sazerac, and then it evolved into an old fashioned, and then mojito.
I've always been a mojito person. I love mojitos.
So now we got a shaker, and all of a sudden, so I have a zombie here cocktail, which is pineapple, grapefruit, falernum, overproof rum, dark Caribbean aged rum, and then light rum, lime juice, mint sprig.
Oh, and it's supposed to have absinthe in it,
but we use herb saint, which
we're not an absinthe family.
Yeah, it's just hard to get. So that's a Sazerac trick. No copyright infringement from another cocktail show that talks about like canoes and stuff. We talk about everything. We just happen to be getting into cocktails. I have the zombie here. Christina has a cherried old fashioned. Okay, so sorry to get you off point. Please begin.
Back on point. Question number 1 comes from Patrick. I don't, dabble in controversy, but
the McCarthy, the McCarthy. Okay, gotcha.
So he asked if you would rather race the Texas Water Safari or the MR340.
As of right now, and I was talking to one of my counselors. I don't know if that's the right word. And we were talking about Texas Water Safari and the MR340. I mean, it's a little more accepting of people. The rule sets are a little bit more straightforward. The course is a little as difficult as the additional 70 miles is, or whatever the 80 miles is. There's more flow. It's more open. I don't know if there's more checkpoints. The stringent rules, and again, some of the TWS stuff, if we get into it, it kind of boxes out people that aren't born and raised on that specific river. And then the MR340, it opens it up where you don't have to be born and raised on that stretch of land to go out there and have a successful run, right? And I think that's one of the big things that opens the door for more people to do it, which 3 times as many people will do the MR340.
Yeah, I was going to ask which one has more of a crowd, because like that's kind of a fun part about like those big races is like how many people show up.
Yep. So definitely for me, the MR340, and if you're an MR340 person, we have selected 5 superhumans and a Robert Norman to be in a boat one of these years. So we're going to have a 6-man boat. We're going to get done in 25 hours. And that's a one and done. We're going to do one night and that's it. So stay tuned in the future for that one.
Oh man, I should have asked your counselor for some of these questions. Oh well.
What's a better word for like if I was if I was a mob boss, he would be my consigliere. You know what I'm saying? Like he would be like, he's like a consultant. Yeah. He's my consultant. So we conferred today, and definitely the MR340 more open arm. I don't know if laid back is the right word, but you have to have an event that allows people to come in and do it and not just feel like they don't belong. Right? Because if you do that, your race will die because you'll scare off your people, which is part of the controversy. All right, so let's move past this. I wanted this to just be a joke, and now we're like getting like into the weeds of it. All right?
Anyways, so I found one question from Eleanor that I could ask without us like breaking rules on YouTube. So she said, would you rather paddle Lake Hernando blindfolded on Memorial Day weekend, or would you rather put on a full set of winter gear on the 4th of July?
Like paddling?
Yes.
So I had to paddle both of them.
Yes.
Okay. So for context, on both of these days are one of them is the Redneck Water Olympic qualifiers, and then the other one is the Redneck Olympics, right? So anybody within a 100-mile radius here that owns a jet ski will take it out on the qualifying day, but they're gonna, even if they don't qualify, they're still gonna be out there for the Olympics. So Lake Hernando gets really crazy on these holidays. I'm sure all waterways do, and we feel it here too. So what is it again? So it's blindfolded
on Memorial Day or winter gear in July. Roseanne.
Oh my gosh. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It sounds like somebody's knocking on our door. It's Rosie. I would say winter gear on the 4th of July because the chances of dying of heat stroke are less than being plowed by some motorboat going for Olympic gold, right? Well, I guess that's the qualifier. So they're just trying to get a qualifying spot. Nonetheless, your life is forfeit in that situation. But yeah, full winter gear, man, that would be tough. That's a tough one because you're gonna die either way, right? Do you want to get run over by a boat or do you want to die a heat stroke? So I choose death by heat stroke, which is the natural Floridian way. I think that's the way we all want to be incinerated at some point, and I think that's beautiful.
All right, so this one was my own question. Would you rather paddle with one side of a wing blade paddle? Either way, you're on a surf ski, or with your rudder stuck 15 degrees one way, you can't move it whatsoever.
Well, it's funny because you end up doing the same thing in both situations. So if your rudder is jammed one way, you have to paddle one side to try and correct the bent rudder. So I would say paddling one blade is it just one blade at a time?
No, you just have one side of a blade, period. So you've got one side that's good and then one side that's not so great.
15 degrees. Okay, where am I paddling?
Just our lake.
Okay, so it's like flat water. I would say the bent rudder because you could always turn in the direction that the rudder is faced and then paddle on the opposite side to correct it. Versus if you only have a wing blade and you're paddling on one side, you can't. I mean, you can. It just sucks. You have to back paddle. So for the sake of speed, 15-degree bent rudder would be the fastest way. For your normal human just trying to get home, just paddle on one side is more doable.
Yeah. All right. So this one came from Justin, and he asked if you would rather hit a manatee or an alligator.
Oh, an alligator, obviously, right? Because like manatees are like gentle, like, loving and, giant fat blobs. And like, you feel bad about alligators are like out for terror. They scare people,
Oh, they're scared of us.
Yeah. But, the reason K2N doesn't have 1,000 members is because of alligators. So if I could go out there and eradicate all of them, paddling would grow as a consequence. So like I understand that alligators are harmless and they don't want any trouble, but so are manatees, right?
Yeah.
So when I first started paddling, I would paddle at Hunter Springs in Crystal River, which is one of the manatee meccas of the world. There's 2,000 winter manatees that come in, and there's 60 year-round residents. And I stopped paddling out there when I got into sit-down boats because you don't have the vantage point of being a stand-up paddler. You're going way faster, and I would run into manatees all the time, and it would break my heart. I was like, I literally can't come out here and do, any kind of intervals or training because you're going to run into stuff. At least on the SUP, you can see them, you can stop, you can divert, change. But when you're in a sit down craft, you hit them and you're like, oh, wow, that's not good.
So
And
I think he was more asking about like boat damage, but it's nice to know that you're thinking about their feelings.
oh, right. Oh, boat damage. Oh, what are you talking about?
Like if you hit a manatee, it's gonna crack your boat in half because he's gonna be scared and run away. And then if you hit an alligator, like chances are he's running away from you anyways.
A boat can always be repaired, but an animal being harmed can never be fixed. Unless it's an alligator and you hope you kill it. You know what I mean? You hit him in the head, he floats to the top, you get the tail, you get the legs, you get the skin, you make wallets out of it. There's so much win here. Have you ever had manatee meat? It's awful.
Okay, no.
You like the implication that I've had manatee meat?
We have not eaten manatee
I'm
meat.
born and raised in Citrus County. We eat manatee all the time.
No, we do not. And so my follow-up for that would be, would you rather paddle with sharks in the water or crocodiles in the water?
Oh, sharks, definitely. So crocodiles actually, so their brains are large enough to like assess more information than like an alligator. And they will literally risk assess and usually come to a conclusion that eating a human is worth the effort, right? Versus an alligator doesn't come to that same, they're not quite as big. Their brain doesn't process that. So crocodiles will look at you and hunt you, right? A shark does not, right? Shark bites are like 7 per year globally. Dude, look up crocodile attacks on the Gold Coast in Australia, and there's like 7 people that die a freaking week, dude. There's like a PSA that goes out is like, don't walk on the beach at night or you will die. And that's from the government, right? And so it just shows you how hardcore crocodiles are.
Yeah, I would agree because like the percentage of sharks that are actually like aggressive compared to the percentage of crocodiles that are aggressive, like if they are guaranteed to be in the water, you're not finding me there. And I'm not going to Australia.
I think a good way to think about it too is like a crocodile attacks you. So it bites you again, it chases you, it pulls you into the water. Those are a lot of like attacking type things. A shark usually bites you once, right? And so it's using its nose and its mouth to figure out what you are. It thinks that you're something else. If a shark attacks you, it would bite you once, it would bite you a second time, it would pull you under, it would try to kill you. And that doesn't happen. Usually you get bit by a shark, but you don't get attacked by a shark. Crocodiles, you get friggin' mauled, dude.
You watch one of those rolling videos?
Is that alligators that do that?
I think they both do.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I don't want to find out. So how about that? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, shark-infested waters. Although as creepy as that is, crocodiles way more, right? Like they're looking to get you. Sharks, they don't care, right? Unless you're a turtle.
All right. So the next one, Patrick asked if you'd rather race Molokai or the Gorge, and I was actually thinking of that before I even asked him, but I would add on that both trips are 100% paid for. They're set up at Molokai. You already have your safety boat. Like you just have to show up to either race and race it. Which one do you choose?
So can I choose the money from the trip for myself?
No, absolutely not.
So that me asking that kind of explains why I haven't done it, because it's like, man, some of that escort boat money would be pretty good. All right, so one or the other. So Gorge would be more fun. It's a week-long event. The downwind is much more consistent. It's all wind swell, easier to catch swells. There's more people that do it, right? Because it's like, 800 people or something ridiculous. So you have international racers. It's a great way to meet people in the sport, in the culture. But Molokai has a mysticism to it, right? Because a lot of people have done Gorge, but not as many people have done Molokai, right? That being said, right, our next week episode, James Dunbar, who's going to come on, and you said you'd interview on the 19th, so now you have to come on because I called you out. But we're talking with Benjamin Beck, and he's like, yeah, it's like 20-foot waves. And like, as he's saying that, like, my eyebrows are like going off screen. Like, 20-foot waves. So Molokai, and that's part of the mysticism of Molokai, is like 20-foot waves is just astronomically horrifying, right?
Mhm.
If you get seasick, if you get freaked out at all, like that is enough to just wear you down to the bone. Gorge, 600 people finish that course or something, right?
Yeah.
So the accessibility of one versus the other. So that's a big draw to it. If I want to have fun, it's Gorge, right? Do a bunch of downwind runs, meet a bunch of people. But if it's for something that I can like tell my kids, like, hey, I did this event, Molokai would be the thing, right? You're at a party, which one has more of an allure and a mysticism to it? It's definitely like when somebody says they've done a Molokai, you're like, whoa, there's a lot that goes into it. The planning and prepping, Benjamin Beck losing a boat, just trying to get it to the freaking island. Like there's so much that goes into a successful run. It's almost luck that you make it across, right? And if you have an excellent run and you're able to compete with some of the top athletes in the world, it just puts the cherry on top. But if you just do it, I've done a Molokai, period.
Mm-hmm.
There is something to that.
Yeah, because like there's been years where the gorge isn't like as big as it is other years. And I mean like same thing for Molokai, but like Molokai on a small year, like I still don't know that I'd be brave enough to do that per se. Whereas like gorge on a small year, I might be okay.
Yeah, psychologically too, right? Like you're in a gorge, right? So like you're on a river, there's a bank on the left and the right. If all else fail, if you're willing to destroy your boat to hit the rocks and get out, your survivability is there, right? Molokai, again, you're relying on your safety boat who may not find you, right? And you get to a point, you don't see either island. It's just ocean all around you, right? So you're using what, a friggin' compass to like figure out which way the islands are, right? So again, there's a level of daunting to that. And I think a lot of it is logistics. So if I had a free paid run, it would have to be Molokai because it's way more expensive. The escort boat, all the flights, all of that. So if I was to redeem it from an economical standpoint, I would have to cash in my Molokai. So what craft would I do it on?
OC1.
On prone.
No.
Prone. M2O on prone. Complete the journey. And I think that's the hardest part with me with a Molokai is like if I do one, I know I'm going to have to do five of them. OC1, surf ski, OC6, maybe a relay in the canoes, surf ski, prone. Hell, let's throw something there too, right?
I mean, honestly, if we're talking about all this money, we should probably just save up and move there because the cost of plane tickets to do that 5 times.
Sorry, Robert Jr., not going to college, but Dad has done Molokai a bunch of times. I don't even know what that is.
All right, so this is another one that came from Patrick, and so if you're going to show up to a flat water race and you have to choose, would you rather use the plastic V7 or one of the older OC ones like a Storm or a Stingray, whichever one you think is
That's a good
slower.
question. And so we have that quantified on K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com. If you guys have not heard of that, you should check it out. And then under one of the tabs, we have gear reviews, right? And using a bunch of different boats, right? The V7 is just as fast as some of the top end modern boats, right? And then some of the older OCs, they have, especially in flat water, they have shapes that are designed for surfing and maneuverability that is not applicable in flat water. So they are very slow as a consequence. 2 blades, even though it's a heavy plastic boat and it's short, it's still very game, right? It still goes very fast, depending on the rider. So if I was racing myself in the V7, there's only a couple of OCs that I own that would be even faster.
You're not necessarily racing yourself. You're just showing up to a race with one boat or the other, period.
Oh, crap. Okay, so it's a race.
Yeah.
And I want to do well at the race. Is there categories?
No.
Oh, shit. Okay, so this is different, right? So the V7 compared to anybody in a V14, this is now a bunch of them beat me, right? They beat me anyways. Put me in a V7 slower. Oh, snap. But I think my highest placing would be the older OC1 because it's a slowdown, but it's not that big of a slowdown comparatively, right? So if I was trying to podium, my chances would be highest in an old school OC1 as opposed to the V7, just because, the carbon boat's speed potential is way higher. And then OC to OC, it's a performance drop, but it's not as catastrophic as a 60-pound plastic boat versus a 21-foot, 18-pound, pre-preg carbon one, right? So I would roll the dice on an old school OC1.
All right. So we're assuming that either way, in this scenario, you have a skeg or a rudder. Would you rather always have to paddle in 10 mile an hour wind or higher, or catch weeds at least once every single time that you paddled?
Oh my God. I would rather paddle in 100-mile-an-hour wind. Like, I hate weeds so much because it's a psychological warfare game, right? When you get weeds, you don't know if you have weeds. You back up. Oh, I'm just slow. It's not weeds. But if you do have weeds and you try to power through it, it'll just kill you, right? And the wind is a constant thing, right? So you know what you're dealing with wind, whether it's side wind or headwind, and you can prepare for it, and it's constant. I can go as hard as I can, as hard as I want, and I'm not being slowed down externally. I'm being slowed down by nature, but I know that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
With the weeds, you don't know. It's like, hey, I'm going to punch you anytime between now and the next 6 months. And it's like you flinch every time you see that person, right? Versus like, I'm just going to punch you every time I see you. Just like, hit me, dude. Like, hey, what's up? Boom, got it. Out of the way. No problem. No paranoia. No psychological warfare. So give me the wind.
All right. So this one comes from Rob. Where are you going? This one comes from Rob from, the Hot Ones episode. Go back and watch that one.
How do you say his last name?
Merlin Brink.
Oh, nice. How do you know that since it's not on Facebook?
I just say it real fast.
Okay.
That he wants to know if you would rather steer OC6 while sitting backwards. Let's say you're on a course like Lake Hernando, all of the surroundings. Mm-hmm. Would you rather steer it backwards while sitting backwards, or while you're blindfolded, but seat 5 gets to tell you where to go?
Blindfolded, seat 5 tells me where to go. Because I'm assuming if I'm backwards, I can't turn my head.
No.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, and part of that is, I've actually thought about this before, right? So, for our lake, we have Lake Hernando, which is the primary lake. And then leading into the second lake, there is a small opening, right? And it's a canal. It's about a half mile. And then it opens into the second lake, which is Lake Todd, right? But there are no physical markers if you're facing backwards to alert you that you're anywhere near the canal until you're in the canal. Then you can see either side of it. But there's a few things on the lake that you can use visually, right? So like if you could do a bunch of practice runs, you could look at the park backwards and try to line that up to line up with the canal. But that would take so many test runs because it's like a mile and a half away. So visually, right, if you're a degree off a mile away, you're run into some trees or something, right? So having 5 poke left, poke right, poke left, that's super easy. Like, nope, left, right. Going through that canal would be tough because it would be a lot more of a tight run. When it would just be a matter of just poking very lightly, right? Mm-hmm. And then just when you poke right, prepare to poke left so the boat doesn't spin out and hit anything. And I think a good seat 5 could, as long as it wasn't the blind leading the blind, right? So it had to be somebody familiar with the lake and understanding how to steer an OC6.
So what if you can look over your shoulder, but your paddle has to be backwards anytime you're trying to help your team with strokes?
Oh no, I wouldn't be helping. I wouldn't be helping.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is an all poke affair. Dude. This is an all poke affair.
Okay.
But yeah, if I could look over my shoulder, that's hard to say. I would say probably looking over the shoulder because it puts more control back into my seat, and I can just turn my head as much as I want to. But yeah, if you couldn't turn, having the other person, so there's like a tier list, right? If I could turn my head, I would do that. Having somebody guide me, and then what would be the worst solution? Oh, backwards without turning your head. Can I do this in somebody else's canoe if this ever happens?
No. So this is another one from Rob. He asked if you would rather have downwind conditions every single day, but the weather is always cold, or you get 2 good downwind runs per year, but you get Florida weather, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the second one is our reality, right? Like
basically,
we get 2 good, like we get a bunch of runs, right? But you only get a handful that are like awesome, right? And it's hard to say, right? A festival that happens annually is only special because it happens once a year, right? We all have like, oh man, we went to the fair and we did all these cool things and I won that prize. If you went to the fair every day, it would lose its allure immediately. You'd be like, man, funnel cakes again. And then if it's miserable, it's raining and it's cold and I'm trying to shoot basketball hoops at the fair, it's like, oh man. So for me, I would like to do downwind runs all the time to hone the skill, to, add it to the repertoire of disciplines to get better at, because we can only sharpen that sword on a very limited basis here in Florida. Mm-hmm. But from the aspect of enjoying them and having great memories and stuff, doing it a couple times a year is not a bad thing, because like I remember all the good runs from last year. It's a handful of them, but each one is special for a different reason. And if I did them every day, I wouldn't have that same allure to it. It wouldn't be quite as special. So that's a hard one to answer. So I gave you a halfway answer on
so let's say from now until next year, you have to choose one. What are you choosing?
I'm going cold weather downwind every day, baby. Woo! Give me the downwinders.
Oh boy.
I want to run. You know what? No more club, no more flat water. Downwind. Where's Robert? Downwinding. He's out in the ocean somewhere
with a life jacket and like 12 layers and
it don't matter. You can layer up. It could be cold. There's Flash Gordon, man. He's downwinding in Germany and he's wearing like the gloves and he's going like 25 kilometers per hour and it's like, dude, sign me up, man. Sign me up. I'm right next to him.
All right, so this next one comes from Lulu from our club. She wants to know if you would rather, like, just grab somebody off the street, anybody, random person. Would you rather be a man or a woman to coach them in paddling?
Wow. That's a tough one. So let me go over the pros and cons from my perspective with men and women, right? So let's start with guys, right? Guys have a injection of self-confidence across the board that you cannot understate, right? Guys all think that they're good at stuff and they're confident, even when they're terrible at it. They think they're good at something. But this confidence is like the foundation to do a lot of things, like join a dragon boat club or get in a surf ski for the first time and do a lot of these things that are admittedly not good for your health. Like you might die, right? You might fall in. The risk assessment on it is not worth it when you really look at it, but guys are willing to go through that, right? And so it makes it easy to coach from that aspect. Like, hey, I need you to do this thing that's kind of dangerous. And they're just like, hey man, let's do it, right? And I'm going to be good at it. And it just allows for that to work well. But the malleability of trying to mold a guy into a very technically savvy racer is super difficult because the attention to detail is hard to get through, right? A lot of guys get to a certain point in skill and they're like, nah, I'm done learning. This is like, I got it. Like, this is as good as I want to get. This is fine, right? And they'll just sit there for the rest of their lives, right? And that's fine. But from a coaching standpoint, some of the things that make me feel good about being a coach and gets me motivated is seeing people progress. So when they dig their heels in and are done progressing, I'm not super motivated anymore to like, what can I do to help this person? The answer is nothing, right? And so that doesn't get me super excited. So guys, in the short term, very fun, right? All kinds of things that you can do, but in the long term, you can see this start to peter out. Ladies, on the other hand, again, risk assessment, ladies are much smarter. They look at it like, oh, there's a % chance that I can die. I can drown. It's not fun. It's not easy.
I can embarrass myself.
I don't want to do it, right? So getting ladies to commit to something is much more difficult, right? But if you can, their prolonged activity within the sport, coachability and stuff is much higher for the long term, right? They want to get better. They've committed to this idea. And so from that coaching standpoint, it's a bit more fun, right? Emotionally, Guys, much easier. You get in a boat silent, paddles, good, right? Ladies, so-and-so is not doing this. They should be doing that. I don't know about this. Coach Robert doesn't know what he's talking about. And so you have a little bit more of that murmuring within the boat, right? And it takes a personality to like take that in and not take it personally, right? I try to keep my coaching standard very high. And so when I hear negative input, I immediately get offended because like, oh man, I've literally committed my life to being good at this. And if I hear conjecture that I'm poor at it, it makes me reassess, right? And most of the time you just don't take it so personally because like it is an outward show of that person's doubts, right? And if you can quell their doubts, then you quell those issues, right? And so I think that's one of the big things I've learned with ladies. If you can inject them with that confidence, show them the skill set, put some, gumption in their motion, right? A lot of that starts to dissipate over time, right? With guys, it's naturally there. I've always grown up. I've had that gumption. Like I'm the greatest t-ball player ever. I'm 4 years old. I can hit the ball every single time, Dad. Check it out, right? And so guys have that, and being around males and sports and stuff, I'm just used to that. Like all of like my teammates ever have more confidence than I do, right? And it's just one of those things that you don't have to cultivate. And with ladies, cultivating that confidence is mandatory, right? And I expect it to be, or I have expected it to be there, and understanding that now. So I would say.
So the way that I worded the question would lead you to choose a man. But if I had worded the question, if you were to choose to coach somebody who's already paddling, man or woman, would you say woman?
Probably. Yeah. So if I had to get a new person, like, hey, you at Walmart, the guy is likely going to be instant gratification. And then with the lady, it's going to be like, hey, in 5 or 6 years, this is going to pay off, maybe, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just something that it's part of the game, right? And if they are already committed to the sport, oh my God, it's super easy, very coachable. That progress is there. They've already gone through the risk assessment. They've gone through the hard part, right? Mm-hmm. And if that has already been provided, the rest of it is much more smooth sailing, right? Getting ladies into OC1s or surf skis for the first time, oh my God, it's like pulling teeth, right? Getting a guy to do it, they'll fall out 12 times. Oh, no problem. And that's what I mean. Like, so trying to take some of those first steps in coaching, getting in a boat for the first time is one aspect, but it translates to a lot of different things, right? When they're fearless, that aspect is a little bit easier. So guys in the short term, ladies, if they're already into it. But the real answer is, I'll coach anybody. It doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't matter. This is all anecdotal, by the way, from my perception of doing it here at Hernando. We've had a lot of people interact with the club and whatnot, and there's going to be a lot of people in the future, right? And, maybe a older version of Robert has a different outlook on it. And if you coach men exclusively or women exclusively, and you want to be on the podcast and tell me what's really up, please book a session today.
All right. So this one's a little bit more simple. Gina wants to know if you'd rather paddle in freshwater all the time or saltwater all the time.
Okay, so I was just thinking about that as I was in the shower 5 seconds ago. So I just got back from coaching down at Clearwater Outrigger Canoe Club, and the amount of salt in that water, I think that scientifically it's impossible to have that much salt in the water, right? It is just thick, right? Like, you talk about the viscosity and the buoyancy, like you can get out of the boat and you just stand on water, right? And people on the beach are like taking photos and like, that's amazing. And it's like, I'm standing on a salt dune out here, right? So that being said, so some of the implication though is like saltwater has tide, waves, swells, right? So from a purely, having to clean your boat, having to clean your body and stuff, freshwater is the king. But when it comes to having textured, varied conditions and climates and stuff, it's a tough one because I personally enjoy it, but it is very tough. Again, with ladies and guys trying to get them on the water, saltwater is another aspect and variable that you have to consider in getting people on the water, keeping them safe and progressing them. And our little flatwater, freshwater lake is a very easy, accessible. You can take anybody out there. Their risk of drowning is very low because it's very controlled, right? The salt is not abrasive to the skin, to the clothes, to the boat, right? So from a day-to-day basis, I am a freshwater guy. Like, I love freshwater. We have deep, clean, easy paddling, right? You can do time trials. You can mark your progress to the millisecond, right? It is very, very standardized. When you paddle in tidal water, salt water, is the viscosity high? Is the temperature high or low? Is there tide? Is there wind?
Is the tide table actually correct, or is it off by an hour?
Where is it? Is the tide table 12 blocks up the road, so it actually hits me 12 minutes earlier? So there's so many things. So when you try and go and do an actual time trial on some of these intercoastal saltwater waterways, it's impossible. Like, you could do it 10 days in a row and have 10 completely different numbers. I could go out in the outrigger canoe in bad conditions with the tide and stuff, and depending on the waterway, I might only go 5 miles an hour. You know how many people on Strava would be like, dude, you're a coach? 5 miles an hour? But it's the water, right? Having shallow, low tide water with a super high current. You're spending 40 minutes going up current and 20 minutes back. That's an equation that doesn't balance out for high speeds, versus on the freshwater, deep water, very consistent. Your first mile and your last mile is consistent. I go out tomorrow, same exact thing. I go out the next day, same exact thing. The wind is the only variable, and most of the time, it's only a small portion of it. We get frustrated. Man, I'm 8 seconds per mile slower because of the wind. Dude, imagine going out and being 90 seconds slower per mile because the tide was not in favor of the way you wanted to go.
Yeah.
You could time the tide to game the system.
If you have an open schedule.
If you can get up at 3 a.m. and go out there as the tide is shifting from slack tide to incoming tide, and you time it perfectly. And then even then, it's not that much faster, right? Because you have the water depth to account for, right? So for me, I love freshwater. I was born a paddler on freshwater. I've learned to paddle. I've started my club there. It will always be where I call home.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun with like downwinders, and like that's pretty much always, even though we're, in Tampa Bay, so we're not like in the ocean, but
you are not in the ocean.
Yeah, I'm not in the ocean.
I only take Christina into the kiddie pool.
Whatever. We've had fun and it's salt water, but I could never give up the springs for that, because I feel like that's just the easy, everyday, very motivating, very pretty, very like just
what springs
easy.
Are you talking about?
Mostly Rainbow River.
Rainbow River. That's right. If you're watching the podcast and you want to come down and paddle at Rainbow River with one of us in the video, send me an email. Leave a comment.
All right. So this next one's another Rob special. He wants to know if you would rather do Chattajack on an ocean style sit on top. So he didn't say specs, but I'm assuming like 10 feet, yeah. 10 and a half feet, yeah. Or a high knee canoe.
How much time do I have to prepare? Is it
this
tomorrow?
This year.
Okay, so the high knee canoe progression, it's like last week, 4 miles. Yesterday, 7.25 miles. It got windy. It was a mistake, right? And so windy on a high knee canoe is like 1 mile an hour, and it was like 6 miles an hour or something, right? But it was enough to throw it off. But Justin, actually, DiGiorgio, episode 12, 11, we did a podcast. I was telling, so he was like, how much respect do you have for the guy that did Chattajack, Ian Ross, who I hope to have on the show? And after doing 7 miles yesterday, I can definitely understand that it's possible, right? Like when you watch it, like, cause he passed us the year. He started in the first heat. We caught up to him, but he was like right next to us, right? And you're watching him, and when you don't do that discipline, it's like it looks impossible, and it's like it's beyond what my perception of reality is, right? Mm-hmm. But after doing 7 miles, it's like, well, with a little more training, I could do 14, and then with a downwind current, maybe I could do 20, right? And so like it opens the door of it being possible. And it's way faster than a freaking 8-foot life-saving kayak or whatever. Even if it was 12 feet or something, the thing is going to be like 85 pounds, and it's awful. And the amount of drag and resistance on the sprint canoe is negligible, right? Like you have like zero drag and you just fly through the water. So I would say the high knee canoe, if I could do it this year, I could definitely finish because that's the thing with Chattajack is it's not like the Texas Water Safari where it has these weird rules where like I can just get out and stand and like get some blood back in my legs, right?
Yeah.
So-
I mean, we did find out on our Chattajack together that there is places that you can pull over and stand up on logs in the water.
That's right.
if you
Yeah,
need
we
to.
blew a rudder line. We went to land, and it's super like it's knee deep, waist deep, right? So there's a lot of places anywhere. You just go anywhere over there, and it's very accessible to stand or sit or whatever. And so just completing it in 8 hours, it's super feasible. You paddle, and I literally did an hour, take a 10-minute break, do another hour, 10-minute break, and still probably finish in like 6.5 hours or something, right? And then the kayak, the percentage of finishing it is 100% with the kayak. And then with the sprint canoe, there's a percentage where you don't finish it, I guess. But being a legend, right? Legends are not born, they are made. So if I had to pick one, it'd have to be the high knee canoe so I could be the second dude to do it. How much experience does he have? 6 months. And he went out there and did Chattajack.
So before Rob messaged me back, my alternate question was, would you rather do 7.25 miles on the high knee canoe on Saturday again?
Okay.
Or would you rather do 30 miles on any other craft of your choice?
Oh my God. Okay. So Saturday was tough, man. So the wind was coming from the side and it was coming from my left side and I paddle on the right side. So turning the boat to the right is kind of like a Herculean effort for me, low skill level, high balance demand. I'm wobbling all over the place.
Boats all over the place.
There's boats going by causing wake and stuff. So paddling on the right side and steering the boat to the right is like 3 times the amount of force necessary when you have a strong wind on the left. And that was the hard part. 6 miles an hour for the first half, 4 miles an hour for the second half, right? And most of it was steering, right? I just couldn't keep the boat going straight. Or when it was a lot of correction strokes that was slowing it down. Super difficult. But that was only 90 minutes under stress. In the most ideal conditions for Chattajack, that's like 4 hours. Like I'll grit my teeth for 90 minutes versus gritting my teeth for 4 or 5 hours, right? So definitely I would just do the high knee canoe. I think that would be easier. I can't think of it, even on surf ski, if you paddled it easy, 5 or 6 hours, I'm like, no way. That's way too long, dude. Like just get it done. Like, let me take my medicine and get off the course.
All right. So would you rather never be able to belly paddle on a prone board or never be able to kneel?
No, knee paddle, right? Okay, so the answer is never being able to knee paddle. And I'll tell you why. Because you can belly paddle with a little bit of practice at a low effort forever. You cannot knee paddle forever, right? Your hamstrings and glutes will explode. I heard a story from Hank Oppenborn, who needs to come on this show. He is lifeguard extraordinaire. If you've lived in the Miami metro area for the last 50 years, he's probably saved your life. So thank you, Hank, for your duty and lifetime life-saving commitment. He told me of a guy from Cuba who was on the life-saving team. And I think he was like an Olympic swimmer, something like that for Cuba. Came over, lifeguard in Miami, and he knee paddled the jungle paddle, which is 5 miles in Hollywood or whatever. And Hank's got to come on the show and tell us about that. Mm-hmm. And he knee paddled on a 10-6 life-saving prone the entire way, which was like 70 minutes on his knees. And that's like, it's a story that makes me go, that's incredible. But if you lay on your stomach and paddle for 70 minutes belly paddling, that's like, well, plenty of people can do that. Some people, that's how they do it. Like some people don't knee paddle because it's so difficult and they only belly paddle, right? So there's a lot of Chattajack finishers that spend 90% of the time on their belly just because they don't have the balance or the movement or the flexibility or the strength reserves to knee paddle, right? So definitely if I had to give one up, it would be one or the other. If I could do one or the other with no fatigue, it'd be knee paddle because I'm super fast knee paddling, but I can only do it for like 2 minutes before I'm like about to like break in half.
What if you didn't have a rudder? Like what if you had like the Eaton board or whatever where it's really hard to steer on your knees?
Right. So infinite stamina, still be knee paddling because you can still steer it knee paddling because you can lean it and you can kind of reach to the side a little bit, and that's enough to command a little 12 or 14 foot board, especially with rocker. But I would still go even without a rudder. If I can knee paddle the whole way without fatigue, that would be the way to go. My belly paddling sucks, right? Because I wasn't a collegiate swimmer. Did you know that? I can barely swim at all. Oh, okay, I can swim okay. But the transferability of knee paddling to actual paddling is very high, right? So immediately, the first day I did knee paddling, it was proficient in some way, right? Belly paddling has no applicability to kayak paddling, canoe paddling, sup paddling, nothing, right? It has applicability to freestyle swim, which I have spent zero time doing. So my belly paddling sucks, and it still kind of sucks, but I can definitely do it on my stomach for multiple minutes, and then knee paddling, it's like 60 seconds hits, and I'm like, do I want to go 60 more seconds, or do I just want to go back to my belly?
All right, so would you rather paddle a surf ski with a sup paddle or paddle a sup with a surf ski paddle? You can have a long surf ski paddle, but you cannot sit down if you're on the sup.
How long is this paddle? Is it like
your sup paddle, or
but double-sided?
Yeah.
Well, I would just have to do that for science, right? Like we would just have to do that to just see how fast the thing could go, right? Like, and then if I'm using the sup paddle, can I sit and choke up on it, or do I have to like hold the top handle?
No, you can choke up on it, but it's still like a full-sized sup paddle.
That's no big deal. So that's like, can you canoe paddle a surf ski
with an obnoxiously long paddle?
Okay, so which one would I want to do? The sup with the double-sided wing paddle? Am I racing the other version of myself?
You're racing me on a surf ski.
I don't know if the sup with the surf ski paddle would win, but the canoe paddle and the surf ski might.
It's a sup paddle.
The sup paddle, yeah. But you're choking up on it, and then the extra length on the top's not a big deal.
It's obnoxious.
Yeah, it looks ridiculous on video, but when you're wielding it, you don't feel, because it's carbon, right? So it's only like 2 or 3 ounces, and it's floating around up there. Man, so if I had to race to beat you in the surf ski, it would be in an elite surf ski with the sup paddle. But if I was just getting a cool Instagram video that nobody would watch, it would be sup double-sided wing paddle for science, right? How fast does that go? I want to know now. Somebody fabricate that. Somebody put like 3 surf ski shafts together with the wing blades on the side. Let me stand.
Well, why wouldn't you just take a sup paddle, take both ends off of it, and put wing blades on them?
Because it wouldn't be long enough, because that's only long enough for one blade on the other side. It would have to be twice as long. So you'd have to put 2 sup paddles together. So your paddle would be like 150 inches, not centimeters. So you would 150 inches. So you need your 400 centimeter paddle.
So you would have to have the lake to yourself, basically, because
yeah, like you couldn't get
the reach is too long.
But I could race a rower in another lane, and we would take up the same amount of space, but they would go 20 miles an hour, and I would go like 5.5 miles an hour.
Okay. So this is kind of paddling related, but not really paddling related.
Skip.
No. So tomorrow is a race day in this, world. Would you rather eat 24 Cliff Bars in 24 hours the day before a race day, or do the Hot Ones challenge again, knowing that you got to race the next morning?
Hot Ones challenge. Dude, oh my God. Where did this question? Does this question come from you?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm still making the Hot Ones wings way I did last time.
You could put the Hot Ones hot sauce in my eyeballs each question and ask me questions. Let me tell you about Cliff Bars real quick. So when I paddled 24 hours, every hour it would have a Gatorade and a Cliff Bar. And if you're an ultra endurance athlete and you're thinking, "Oh my God, that sounds awful. That's not the right macros. You don't have the right salt composition." I get it. I was like 20 years old, dude, okay? And nobody in the ultra endurance paddling world reached out to me and talked to me. They're just like, yeah, do whatever you want, bro. Because they all wanted me to fail, right? That's ultimately it. So,
well, also, like, everybody's different. If you go to every single person at MR340,
yeah, that's
how many
right.
different people have a different...
Most of them are just eating Doritos and drinking their Sprite, right? Whatever. So Cliff Bar, Gatorade, and I had some other stuff, Tailwind, and some other things, but I loved Cliff Bars, right? And during all my training, I do a 6-hour paddle, 12-hour paddle, 18-hour paddle, 12 hours one day, 12 hours the next. Every hour, I have a Cliff Bar, and it was like, oh, this is great. Like I just eat it real quick. And you would stop paddling for a moment, which would give you this reprieve, right? Because 24 hours paddling, I paddled like literally 23 and a half hours, half an hour for all accountability things, eating, drinking, using the bathroom, whatever, right? Probably less than 30 minutes if I had to guess. But by like hour 18, it's like super pitch black out. I'm praying that the sun comes up eventually, right? And I'm like chewing this Cliff Bar, and I realize I'm sick and tired of these goddamn things, right? And every time I go to like Walmart and I walk by Cliff Bars, I shudder because I think about being wet and cold, 4 a.m, paddling almost 24 hours, being fatigued and tired, and this Cliff Bar. Oh my god! And it's like halfway soggy because like water's gotten on the board. I'm like chewing it down. It's like, this sucks. And so I would not eat enough. I couldn't eat 20. If you made me eat 24 Cliff Bars, you would have 24 Cliff Bars mass worth of throw up in front of you. There's no way I could get it down. So the hot ones in my eyeballs. Is that a new episode? Let's do it. Get the hot ones now. Put it right in my eye.
No, didn't Steve-O do that one?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll just put that video here, and then
okay,
you guys can check it out. Pretend it's me.
All right. So I took a little bit of inspo from a question that Luann sent me, and I revised it a little bit. So would you rather race with your ama on the right hand side or backwards? You don't get to practice either one of them from now until the race. But which one would you rather do?
I'm a backwards, right? Okay, so let me explain to you my thought process. So I have done right side AMA before. And immediately when I did it, it was like being a first timer again. It was like being a first timer, but having all of this experience, and it was still like timid, right? So the amount that you lean to the left, it's pretty negligible. As you get faster, you sit more and more upright, but you don't sit totally upright, right? You have this window of motion to your left side that you can lean on. And when you take that away, your muscle memory doesn't instantly adapt, right? Mm-hmm. So your body wants to lean left, but it's dangerous, right? My left side bracing, it sucks because I can't physically do it, right? So paddling right side, AMA's up, paddling with the AMA up. Oh man, Robert, that's so cool. I can't do it left side because the AMA's in the way. You can't lean, right? Mm-hmm. So I have like 0 reps left side AMA paddling, to the point that the sprint canoe is feasible for me because of the right side bracing. If I go left knee, right leg up, my left brace sucks, right? And so it's just not the same. Surf ski is a totally different thing because you're inside of the vessel. So that bracing and that leeway is a little bit different versus being on top of a vessel or being high on a vessel. And then even on like SUP, it only leans a little bit before you need to brace. So like that left side brace is not quite as adept, right? And a backwards AMA, which I've thought about, depending on the model, if I could get the Hurricane OC1, if you have the AMA on backwards, it still functions 90% of the way that you need to. Now with like a Kaiwa'a AMA, it's going to drag big time in the front because like the way that it's shaped.
What about the Scorpius? If you had to do it in the Scorpius.
Oh my God. So the Scorpius, even the Pukea
like,
ones.
Whoop.
Yeah. So they have like this big banana curve, and the banana curve, like it pushes the tail down a lot. So if you have it on backwards, that tail is in front of you pushing down, right? So if you were to paddle hard, but I could lean to the right enough to lift it up, right? And so I think that would be an easier route to go of leaning away from the AMA, having all of that muscle memory versus not having that muscle memory. I would immediately go slower. I've done it a couple of times with the Draco, and I paddle with the AMA on the right side. And the only reason I don't do it more is there's no outlet for it, right? There's no reason to paddle with the right side AMA. And I immediately know that it would take a very long amount of time to get used to it in the same way. And there's nothing that you get for it. It's just like, oh, that's cool. I watched this 12-second video. Wow, that's cool, dude. Like, it's like there's nothing that you can gain from it. So for time, accessibility and stuff, backwards my AMA. Let's do it.
Oh my goodness. So, let's see. Would you rather train in 100-degree heat or 40-degree heat?
100 every time. Every time. Every time. So being in Florida, you get good at dispersing heat out of your body, right? And that's all I know. I only know 80, 90, oh man, it's so cold in Florida. It's 77 degrees. It's 77. Oh, the wintertime. Yeah, it's like 40 degrees like 3 times a year, right? So on the other side of the curve, if you didn't know this, I am an Air Force brat. And so born on Oahu. And then my father got stationed in Anchorage, Alaska at Elmendorf Air Force Base. And we lived in Alaska, in the middle of it. The start of the Iditarod, the unofficial start, they start in Anchorage, but they go from Eagle River to Anchorage as like a little test run, little ceremonial thing. And I remember very distinctly, it was 10 degrees, and I was outside in a windbreaker, a t-shirt, and I had jeans on, and I think I had my snow boots on too. And I was playing catch with a friend, and I was sweating, and my mom came out, and she was so mad. Robert, it is too cold. You need to put more clothes on. And I'm sweating. And I'm like, Mom, it's 10 degrees out. Right? Because the week and a half before that, it was negative 30. And I was outside playing catch with the same friend in my full snowsuit. Mm-hmm. And my mom came out and she's like, Robert, it's negative 30. You're not supposed to be outside. That was the cutoff. Negative 30. You couldn't play outside anymore. But I snuck out. I was like, I'm going to go outside. Hey, Mommy's negative 29, right? And so I get like whatever you're used to is what you're used to, right? So from negative 30 to 10, that's a 40-degree swing. I was outside sweating. We would be outside in the springtime. It'd be 40 degrees out, but the snow would be melting. And we'd be in t-shirts and shorts, sweating, playing around outside, right? You go outside, it's like, dude, it's like balmy. It's 40 degrees out, balmy, right? Mm-hmm. And so it just depends on where you're from, right? So that version of Robert, the hardcore 7-year-old Robert, he wouldn't want 40-degree weather because he'd be sweat.
Yeah.
This Robert, the soft one, you know what I mean? 40 degrees, my hands don't function anymore. I got to wear gloves. They're not working right. I can't hold the paddle. I'd rather take 100. My whole body works. You just hit the overheat and overtraining sooner. But with 40, I don't feel like I can get to that point without over-encumbering myself with clothing, which I hate. I hate losing connection with the paddle, losing connection of movement because I have, a sweater on or, a wetsuit or a dry suit or whatever. I'd rather remove those things and have a normal training session that's overly hot.
Yeah, like I remember living in Buffalo, and like my uncle came to visit us, and he was living in the Philippines like right before then, and we are just like dying. It's 80 degrees. We're like, oh my God, it's so hot out here. And he's like, I'm not even sweating. Like, it's really not that hot, guys. And so now that I've been in Florida for so long, like 80 degrees is what I set my air to in the morning to get the fog off my windshield. Like, and that's pretty comfortable. By the time I get to work, I'm like, yeah, this is great. 80 degrees. Like,
yep. It's all about what you're used to, right? And we're definitely used to, like, it was like 96 degrees or something today. I was out there from 8 a.m. or 7:45 a.m. until like 1:15 or something. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. Like, but it's like, it's what I'm used to. So that's definitely my answer. Is the cold is alien to me. And my 7-year-old version, he lived on another planet, and I don't know how he ended up on Earth.
All right, so this is the last Patrick question, and then also the last question that I have is, would you rather give up paddling for a year or alcohol for a year?
Alcohol for a year.
Yeah, I kind of figured that was kind of
I can find a new hobby. So cocktails are fun. Craft beer is fun. But paddling is life. You know what I mean? And for me specifically, you watching this, right? YouTube monetization, Spotify, Apple, it's not much, right? But it's part of my income, right? The club, the online school, I'm very fortunate that it is literally my livelihood, right? And so it is an aspect of my life that's integrated to a point that I can't give it up, right? Like, this is the path that I've chosen. Alcohol is just for fun, right? Again, like, it's cool, oh man, banana beer and like, mixing a zombie, which is, you drink it and you're supposed to end up like a zombie, but me, I'm only the Walking Dead, not a full zombie, right? But yeah, so like any vice, right, is something that can be removed, and it doesn't affect the quality of my life in the same way that paddling is, right? It is my outlet. It is my way to connect with people, to, help motivate people to change their lives. This is something that's worth investing your time and effort into. Alcohol, not so much. Now, if that conversation ever changes, you gotta book me into alcohol recovery rehab. Exactly, right. And obviously, paddling. You can't give it up for a year. What would I do? Who would I be?
I don't know.
I would have like 12 pugs at the end of it. I'd be I'd be the pug man, and you'd be watching me on,
Hoarders, Animal Edition.
Pughoarders.com. Check out the website. No, I'm just kidding. So that's all the questions?
Yeah. I'm just going to check my phone real quick to make sure that I didn't get any, last minute submissions. Let's see.
I do want to point out that I had no idea that this was being done. So if you asked a question today, you're on a list, and I'm not going to forget.
Nope. That's all the questions.
That is all the questions. And get this, that was exactly 1 hour.
That's pretty cool.
Was there anything else that we wanted to go over while we were?
I mean, I was going to bring up the fact that you're running out of paddle disciplines to make you feel like a newbie, but you just talked about how right side AMA paddling makes you feel like a newbie. So maybe when you're done with all this prone and the high kneeling and you want to feel a little bit like you're flailing out there, right side AMA, that's the next thing.
Definitely. Yeah. So check out Instagram for me, left side paddling, right side AMA, flying the AMA, and doing all these cool tricks in the next 24 hours.
24 hours.
So that was one thing that we were talking about is, going through all these paddle disciplines. I am running out. I think I've done almost all of them. The only ones that are further down are more specialized ones like white water and wild water, which are dependent on the environment around them a little bit more. But other than that, when it comes to pure paddle crafts, especially for flat water, I have checked every box so far. I think 7.25 miles in the high knee canoe. I think that's a short list of people that have done that this year in America. You know what I'm saying? If it's 100 people, it's impossible. Are there 100 of them out there? If you're out there, come on the show, tell us about it, show me how it's done. Somebody commented the other day, my 15-year-old daughter does see one, and I'm just like, yep, whatever, man. But then he was saying that he tried it, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to stick to my outrigger. And that's how I feel too, brother. That's how I feel too.
Yeah, I feel like kids just have this innate ability to just kind of grab something and run with it and not realize how hard it is.
Absolutely. That's why children are the ultimate coaching as opposed to adults, men, women. It don't matter. Give me a teenager, man. Give me a teenager that's retired, infinite money, infinite motivation, fearless. That's the kind, you know what I'm saying? The ultimate athlete.
So that was kind of like a two-person question by Eleanor and Rebecca was, would you rather coach an 8-year-old who could not sit still for 1 second or Rebecca or basically anyone on the team?
That's tough. No, I'm just kidding. So that is one coaching outlet that I am the most inexperienced at and have the least ambition for is kids between the ages of 3 and I would say 10 for most and 12 for the majority of them, right? So I've coached kids for personal training and stuff, and hey, I'm 9, play tennis, right? And their parents make them get some, hand-eye coordination motion with personal training. And I got this question posed to me once, and because I couldn't answer it, it just shows how poor I am as a coach for kids that age. Is why am I doing this? And it's well, it's to make you better and to win. But I don't care about winning, and that's the spark that is necessary to get good at anything ever, right? Is if you when kids reach teenage years and they realize that hey, if I'm good at this thing, it builds my confidence. Socially, it brings me higher up on a hierarchy. I want to win. I want to do this sport and defeat the other person. And now you are going to train for it. You're going to think about it. You're going to get better at it. But when you're 8, you don't give a crap, right? And so what is the motion? Why do the push-ups? Why do the side steps? Why go through the hand-eye coordination? If there's no goal, there's no point, right? And adults are like this too, right? Oh, I go out and paddle and I don't have a clear goal. I don't want to get faster. I don't want to do this. I don't want to paddle with the group. there is no motivation to get better, and there's no reason for me to help, right? And so in Rebecca's case and anybody on the team, all of them want to get better. And that's the number one thing that keeps me motivated until the day I die. As long as the person wants to get better, I'm here for you. I will help you with it. I've wanted to get better. I've wanted people to help me. So I'm in a position to fill that void, right? And if you don't have any intrinsic motivation, there's nothing that you can do to help them, right? So children, 8-year-olds that can't sit still for a minute, have no intrinsic motivation. There's nothing I can do to help them, right? But when they turn 13, man, if only I was better at baseball, that girl would like me. They're going to commit their life to getting better at baseball. They're going to go through hip rotation. They're going to learn to catch the ball. They're going to learn to pitch, whatever it is, right? And now you set the spark into motion, right? I go 5.9 miles an hour, but I want to go 6.0 miles an hour. And now you've opened up this whole avenue and this whole world, that you can develop on, right? And that's where I come in. So don't feel bad, Rebecca, Eleanor. I'll coach you guys until you lose interest, basically, right? I will not lose interest. It is up to you. As long as you're intrinsically motivated, I'm here for you.
All right. That's everything I had.
Nice. Was that a nice, profound finish for the show?
It was a fun show.
That was pretty good. That was a lot more questions than I thought you were going to ask. So I'm glad we filled the whole hour. I think that's everything. So if you were part of the Texas Water Safari and you want to let me know about what's going on, you want to talk about it, I'll let you talk and I'll sit here silently and absorb the information. Next week we got James Dunbar. You can't back out now, James. We said your name's twice on the show. You got to tell us about Molokai.
Also, if you want to tell us which one you would rather do, we'd love to hear it in the comments on YouTube or
oh my goodness, if you're
on Spotify.
I should have said that at the beginning.
Yeah,
they're already at the end.
Too late.
Now they got to go back and watch the whole show to find these questions.
Well, you can put this part in the beginning.
I can't do that. They're going to see the empty glasses and everything, right? So yeah, please share with us if you remember the questions and stuff, and you have one. If you have one you would like to pose, if we can accumulate enough, we'll do this again. If you guys hate this episode, please do not comment, and we'll pretend
we don't want to know.
We don't want to know, right? Excellent. Thank you guys so much for being part of the K2N Online Paddle School experience here on YouTube. Thank you so much for checking out the Paddle Pursuit podcast, and we'll see you all next week with James Dunbar. He has to come on now. He has to come on now.